Paper promises. Harrison Reed adjusted his custom Italian suit as he paced the length of his penthouse office. At 36, he'd built Nexus Technologies into a $4.2 billion empire. But now everything teetered on the edge of collapse. The board meeting's in 3 hours. Harrison, said Dominic, his chief legal counsel, scrolling through his tablet. The investors are spooked. This scandal with Vanessa claiming you promised her marriage while dating their daughters. He sighed. They're old-fashioned families. They're threatening to pull funding. Harrison ran a hand through his dark hair. It's complete fiction. Vanessa and I dated for 2 months. Doesn't matter. The tabloids are running wild. And the conservative Brooks family controls 40% of your upcoming funding round. They're insisting you project stability. A knock interrupted them. Fiona Morgan entered, her auburn hair pulled into a professional bun, tablet in hand. As Harrison's childhood friend and now executive assistant, she was the only person who still called him by his childhood nickname. Harry, your mother called again. She's seen the headlines, Harrison groaned. Perfect. Dominic snapped his fingers suddenly. I have it. You need a wife. Excuse me? Harrison and Fiona spoke simultaneously. Not a real one, Dominic clarified. A contract marriage. Someone respectable, professional, with an established connection to you that would explain a whirlwind marriage. Harrison's eyes drifted to Fiona. She stepped back. No, absolutely not. Fee, please, Harrison said, using his own childhood nickname for her. It would just be on paper. I'm your assistant, not a prop, she replied, crossing her arms over her burgundy blouse. You'd be compensated substantially, Dominic added. $2 million for 1 year. Enough to fund that wildlife conservation foundation you've been dreaming about. Fiona's expression faltered. Her passion project, protecting endangered species, had stalled for years due to funding issues. The contract would be ironclad, Harrison promised. Separate residences, clear end date, complete confidentiality. You just need to appear at key events, Dominic explained. The Brooks dinner next week, quarterly investor meetings, some charity galas. Fiona paced, her practical heels clicking on the hardwood floor. This is insane. It's business, Harrison countered. And it would help both of us. She stopped, studying her childhood friend. They'd grown up on the same street, him in the mansion on the hill, her in the modest professor's house below. She'd watched him build his empire from nothing after his family lost everything in his teen years. Despite their different worlds now, their friendship had somehow endured. One condition, she finally said. No physical contact beyond what's absolutely necessary for appearances. Of course, Harrison agreed quickly. And I keep my apartment. Naturally, though you'll need to officially move into my guest wing. Dominic produced a contract with suspicious speed. I took the liberty of drafting this. Review it, make changes, and we can finalize before the board meeting. As Fiona scanned the document, Harrison watched her, the furrow in her brow, the way she bit her lower lip in concentration. The same expression she'd had when they studied together as teenagers. 12 months, she confirmed, looking up. Then I walk away with my money and my life back. Exactly, Harrison nodded, ignoring the strange twinge in his chest. Just signatures on paper. Nothing real about it. Fiona picked up a pen, hesitated for just a moment, and signed her name. Congratulations, Dominic said dryly. You're engaged. Neither noticed how Harrison's hand trembled slightly as he added his own signature to the document that would change everything between them. Scripted affection, the Brooks family estate sprawled across 30 acres of manicured gardens and old money. Fiona adjusted the emerald necklace Harrison had insisted she wear. On loan, he'd emphasized, as their driver navigated the winding driveway. Remember, Harrison murmured. We've been secretly dating for 8 months. Childhood friends who reconnected last summer. At the Taylor Foundation Gala, Fiona recited. I was there representing the Wildlife Conservation Committee. You donated $10 million and we've been inseparable ever since. Harrison nodded approvingly. You'll do fine. I'm not worried about my performance, she replied. I've been managing your life for 3 years. I know your schedule, allergies, and coffee preferences better than you do. That's why this is perfect, he said, briefly touching her hand before remembering their agreement. Sorry. The car stopped, and moments later they were engulfed in the elegant chaos of the Brooks annual spring soiree. Jasmine Patel, Harrison's PR director, had coached them extensively, and Fiona played her part flawlessly. laughing at the right moments, sharing carefully constructed anecdotes about their relationship. "You always did have a way of saving him from himself," Mrs. Reed commented when Harrison stepped away to speak with investors. Harrison's mother, who'd been skeptical but ultimately supportive of their sudden engagement, studied her carefully. "Someone has to," Fiona replied with a practiced smile, though the words held more truth than she intended. As the evening progressed, Fiona found herself at the edge of the terrace, taking a moment's reprieve from the performance. "Hiding from your fiancé?" The voice belonged to Wesley Brooks, the eldest son of the family and a key board member. "Just getting some air," Fiona responded. "I was surprised by the engagement," Wesley said, leaning against the stone balustrade. "Harrison never struck me as the marrying type. People change, do they?" Wesley's gaze was assessing. "I've known Reed for 15 years. Brilliant businessman, terrible with personal commitment." Fiona felt a flare of unexpected defensiveness. "You don't know him like I do." "Perhaps not," Wesley conceded, "though I find it interesting that after years as his assistant, he suddenly sees you differently." "It wasn't sudden," Fiona countered, the rehearsed lines flowing naturally. "Sometimes what you're looking for is right in front of you." "How romantic," Wesley remarked, his tone suggesting skepticism. Before he could press further, Harrison appeared at her side, his arm sliding around her waist with practiced casualness. "There you are. Mother's looking for us." As they walked away, his arm remained warm and steady against her back. "Everything okay?" he asked quietly. "Wesley was fishing," she whispered. "I think he suspects something." Harrison's fingers tightened slightly. "You handled it perfectly." "I heard what you said." Later that night, in the silent car ride home, Harrison broke the comfortable silence. "Thank you for tonight. The Brooks family is fully on board now." "Just doing my job," Fiona replied, gazing out the window at the city lights. "Is that all this is to you? A job?" Something in his tone made her turn to look at him. "Isn't that what we agreed on?" she countered softly. Harrison's expression shifted almost imperceptibly. "Of course. I just meant you're good at this. Better than I expected." "Thanks, I think," she said, returning to the window. 3 weeks into their arrangement, they'd settled into a rhythm. Fiona maintained her separate life while occasionally appearing at Harrison's penthouse for planned events. The press had been fascinated initially, but was gradually accepting their relationship as established fact. One rainy Tuesday evening, Fiona arrived at the penthouse to find Harrison in the kitchen, sleeves rolled up, attempting to cook. "What are you doing?" she asked, setting down her umbrella. "Making dinner," he replied, looking slightly embarrassed. "I remembered you mentioned craving your grandmother's lasagna recipe." "I called your mother." Fiona stared at the mess of ingredients. "Why?" Harrison shrugged, suddenly looking boyish in a way she hadn't seen in years. "Because there's no one here to impress. No investors or reporters. Just us." Something warm and dangerous unfurled in her chest. "You didn't have to." "I wanted to," he said simply. "Even fake marriages need real moments, don't they?" They ate on his balcony, protected from the rain by a glass canopy, the city lights blurring beneath them. Harrison shared stories from his latest development project, not the sanitized version for investors, but the messy, complicated truth. Fiona found herself laughing genuinely, forgetting momentarily that their relationship existed on paper rather than in reality. When their hands accidentally touched reaching for the wine bottle, neither pulled away immediately. Later, as she prepared to leave, Harrison helped her with her coat. "The Williamson charity auction is Saturday," he reminded her. "I know. I put it on your calendar," she replied with a small smile. His hands lingered on her shoulders. "Sometimes I forget this isn't real," he admitted quietly, then immediately looked as if he regretted the words. Fiona stepped away, her heart beating traitorously fast. "That's why we have the contract, Harrison. To remember what's real and what isn't." As she rode the elevator down to the lobby, Fiona pressed her fingers to her temples. The lines were beginning to blur, and they were only 2 months into their 12-month agreement. The thought terrified her more than she cared to admit. Fracturing foundations. The summer heat wave coincided with Nexus Technologies' 10th anniversary celebration. 6 months into their arrangement, Fiona found herself becoming dangerously comfortable in her role as Harrison's fiancée. The Nexus headquarters rooftop garden buzzed with employees, investors, and media representatives as Harrison delivered his keynote address. "When I started this company in my garage," he was saying, his voice carrying across the crowd, "I had nothing but an idea and stubborn determination." Fiona watched from the side, having heard various iterations of this speech throughout the years. But tonight something was different. Harrison kept glancing her way, his usually polished delivery punctuated by moments of genuine emotion. "But I didn't get here alone," he continued, deviating from his prepared remarks. "Sometimes the person who believes in you most has been there all along." Their eyes met across the crowd, and the practiced smile Fiona had perfected faltered into something more authentic. This wasn't part of the script. After the applause died down and Harrison worked the room, Olivia Chen, Nexus's marketing director, sidled up to Fiona. "That wasn't in the speech we approved," Olivia remarked. "Harrison never goes off script," Fiona sipped her champagne. "He's passionate about the company milestone." Olivia hummed skeptically. "Or he's passionate about something else. I've known Harrison for 8 years, and I've never seen him look at anyone the way he looks at you." Before Fiona could formulate a response, a commotion near the entrance drew their attention. Vanessa Lockwood swept onto the rooftop, her platinum hair gleaming under the string lights, wearing a dress that seemed designed specifically to turn heads. "Isn't that—" Olivia trailed off. "His ex," Fiona confirmed, her stomach clenching. "The one who caused the PR disaster." Vanessa made a beeline for Harrison, who visibly stiffened at her approach. From across the room, Fiona could see the tense exchange. Vanessa's hand resting on Harrison's arm, her body angled intimately toward his. "Trouble in paradise?" Olivia murmured. Fiona set down her glass with deliberate calm. "Excuse me." She moved through the crowd with practiced ease, years of navigating business functions paying off. As she approached, she caught the tail end of Vanessa's words. "Always knew you'd come to your senses eventually." Harrison looked relieved at Fiona's arrival. "Vanessa, you remember Fiona." "The assistant," Vanessa said dismissively, "though I hear congratulations are in order. Quite the promotion." "Fiancé?" Fiona corrected smoothly, sliding her hand into Harrison's. The gesture, which had begun to feel natural over the months, now felt like a lifeline. "Lovely to see you again, Vanessa." "Harrison and I were just reminiscing," Vanessa purred, "about Santorini last year. That private villa was unforgettable." Fiona maintained her smile despite the unexpected sting. Harrison had never mentioned Santorini. "If you'll excuse us," Harrison said firmly, "we need to greet the board members." As they walked away, Fiona whispered, "You never told me about Santorini." "It was before we—" Harrison caught himself. "Before this arrangement. It didn't seem relevant. It becomes relevant when she shows up uninvited to ambush you," Fiona replied, surprising herself with the edge in her voice. Harrison guided her to a quiet corner. "Are you jealous?" he asked, a hint of wonder in his tone. "Of course not," she said too quickly. "But it affects the optics. People are watching." "Right," he said after a pause. "The optics." The next morning, Fiona arrived at Harrison's penthouse for their scheduled brunch with his mother, only to find Vanessa exiting the elevator in last night's dress. "Morning. Assistant," Vanessa smirked, brushing past. "Don't worry, I'm not staying. Just picking up old memories." Fiona stood frozen until the elevator doors closed, then stormed into the penthouse. Harrison was in the kitchen, phone pressed to his ear. What was she doing here? Fiona demanded the moment he ended the call. Harrison looked genuinely confused. "Who?" "Vanessa. I just saw her leaving." Understanding dawned on his face. "She came by unannounced at 7 this morning, claiming she left earrings here last year. I was on a conference call with Tokyo. I let her look for them in the guest room she used to use, then went back to my call." "And you didn't think to mention this?" "I didn't think it mattered," he said, frustration creeping into his voice. "It's not like we're actually together, Fiona." The words hit like a physical blow. "You're right," she said quietly. "We're not." Something shifted in his expression. Don't call me that," she interrupted. "Not right now." Harrison stepped closer. "Nothing happened." "Nothing would happen." "It doesn't matter," she insisted, even as relief washed through her. "This is business, remember? Paper promises." "Is that all this is to you now?" he asked, echoing his question from months ago. Fiona looked away. Isn't that what we agreed? Before he could answer, his mother arrived, and they slipped back into their roles. But something had fractured between them, invisible yet undeniable. That night, alone in her apartment, Fiona scrolled through photographs from the company celebration. She paused on one captured by the event photographer, Harrison looking at her while she was focused elsewhere, his expression unguarded in a way she'd never seen directly. Her phone buzzed with a text from Harrison. Vanessa contacted the press claiming we're having problems. Jasmine is handling it, but we should be seen together this weekend. The Symphony Gala? Fiona stared at the message, at the carefully professional tone that had never existed between them before today. With trembling fingers, she typed, "Of course. Just business." His reply came 3 minutes later, a single word that somehow felt weighted with everything unsaid. "Right." She set down her phone and closed her eyes, finally acknowledging the truth she'd been avoiding for months. Somewhere along the way, despite all her precautions, she had fallen in love with her fake husband. And now, with Vanessa's return and the contract's midpoint approaching, Fiona faced the most painful realization of all. In 6 more months, she would have to walk away from Harrison as if none of it had ever been real. Because for him, perhaps it never was. Dissolving dreams, the autumn leaves swirled around Fiona as she exited the sleek black car alone. Harrison had been called to an emergency board meeting. At least that's what his terse text had said. 3 months had passed since Vanessa's appearance at the anniversary party, and though they'd maintained their public facade flawlessly, privately, an ocean had grown between them. "Mrs. Reed," the gallery owner greeted, then corrected herself. "I mean, soon to be Mrs. Reed. We were expecting both of you tonight." "Business emergency," Fiona explained smoothly. "Harrison sends his apologies." She circulated through the charity art auction, making appropriate small talk and noting which pieces Harrison might appreciate for the office. It had become routine, navigating these events solo while maintaining the illusion of their perfect engagement. Flying solo again? Wesley Brooks materialized beside her, studying a contemporary sculpture. Fiona maintained her composure. Harrison had a board meeting. "Third event he's missed this month," Wesley observed casually. "Trouble in paradise?" "Not at all," she replied with practiced ease. "Just the reality of being engaged to someone building an empire." Wesley's eyes narrowed thoughtfully. "You know, when this engagement was first announced, I had my doubts. But watching you these past months, you've been remarkable, patient, loyal." He paused. "Perhaps too loyal given the circumstances." "What circumstances?" Wesley pulled out his phone, swiping to a tabloid article. The headline made her stomach drop. "Read romance Rocky? Tech billionaire spotted with ex in Paris." The photo showed Harrison and Vanessa outside a Parisian cafe, his hand on her arm as they appeared deep in conversation. "This is from yesterday," Wesley said quietly. "During his business trip?" Fiona's practiced smile didn't falter, though something inside her crumbled. "I'm aware of the meeting. It was business-related." "Of course," Wesley said, unconvinced. "Just like your engagement?" Her head snapped up. "Excuse me?" "Fiona," Wesley's voice softened. "I've known Harrison for years. I recognized the contract marriage for what it was. What I didn't expect was for you to actually fall in love with him." She opened her mouth to deny it, but no words came. "For what it's worth," Wesley continued, "I think he's a fool." That night, Fiona waited in the penthouse, the Paris tabloid article open on her tablet. When Harrison finally returned after midnight, he startled at finding her in the darkened living room. "You're still up," he said, loosening his tie. "How was Paris?" she asked quietly. Harrison froze momentarily. "Productive." I imagine Vanessa thought so too. His expression shifted from surprise to resignation. "You saw the photos." "Everyone saw the photos, Harrison." "That was rather the point of a public meeting, wasn't it?" Harrison set down his briefcase. "It wasn't what it looked like." "It never is," Fiona said, standing. "The thing is, I don't even have the right to be upset. This arrangement," her voice caught, "this business arrangement doesn't give me any claim on your personal life." We have 3 months left," she interrupted. "I think we should end it now." Harrison stilled. "What?" "The contract has served its purpose. The Brooks investment is secure. Your reputation is restored. Clearly you're moving on to other interests." "That's not," Harrison raked a hand through his hair. Vanessa approached me about investing in her fashion line. I met her to decline personally. It doesn't matter, Fiona said, though her heart leapt traitorously. This was always temporary. We're just accelerating the timeline. Harrison studied her, something unreadable in his eyes. Is that what you want? What she wanted was for him to fight for her, for him to admit that somewhere in these 9 months the lines had blurred for him too. That he felt the same electricity when their hands touched, the same completeness when they laughed together over private jokes. Instead, she said, "It's what makes sense." A muscle worked in his jaw. "Always practical, aren't you? One of us has to be." The silence stretched between them, filled with words neither was brave enough to say. "I'll have Dominic draw up the dissolution papers," Harrison finally said, his voice professionally detached. "You'll receive the full compensation, of course." "Thank you," she replied formally, as if they were concluding a business meeting rather than dismantling the most significant relationship of her life. She gathered her coat and purse, pausing at the door. "Goodbye, Harrison." Something flickered across his face. Pain, regret, something else entirely, before his expression closed off completely. "Goodbye, Fiona." The following weeks passed in a blur. The press release cited mutual decision to part as friends and continuing professional respect. Fiona threw herself into establishing her wildlife foundation with her settlement money, while Harrison disappeared into a series of international business trips. On a rainy December evening, Fiona was working late at her foundation's new office when Olivia unexpectedly visited. "I thought you should know," Olivia said without preamble. "He's miserable." Fiona continued organizing documents. "Harrison is always moody during the fourth quarter." "Not like this," Olivia insisted. "He's like a ghost. Mechanically efficient, but empty." "That's hardly my concern anymore." Olivia sighed. "You're both impossibly stubborn. He won't admit he's in love with you, and you won't acknowledge you still love him." "It was a contract, Olivia. A business arrangement." "Was it? Because I saw how you looked at each other when you thought no one was watching. That wasn't in any contract." After Olivia left, Fiona stood at her office window watching the rain blur the city lights. The truth was she missed him with an ache that physical distance did nothing to ease. She missed his rare, genuine laugh, the way he'd absently rub his temple when concentrating, how he always remembered exactly how she took her coffee. Her phone buzzed with a text notification. Harrison's name appeared on the screen, the first direct contact in weeks. "The dissolution papers are ready. Can we meet?" She stared at the message, her thumb hovering over the screen. Finally, she typed, "Your office tomorrow, 10 a.m. His response came immediately. "See you then?" Fiona set down her phone and closed her eyes. Tomorrow would officially end their paper marriage, a relationship that had begun as a signature on a contract but had somehow, despite all her precautions, claimed her heart entirely. Rewritten realities, Harrison's office felt different, colder, more sterile than Fiona remembered. Or perhaps it was simply that she was now a visitor, rather than an integral part of his world. The dissolution papers waited on his desk, stark white against the dark mahogany. "Thank you for coming," Harrison said formally, not quite meeting her eyes. "Let's keep this brief," Fiona replied, setting down her purse. "I have a foundation meeting at 11. Harrison nodded, gesturing to the chair across from his desk. As she sat, she noticed the changes in him, the shadows under his eyes, the slight weight loss evident in his face. She pushed away the concern that rose instinctively. "Before we sign," Harrison said, sliding a folder toward her, "I want to discuss the foundation." Fiona frowned. "The settlement money is mine. It's not subject to renegotiation." "That's not," he exhaled sharply. "I'm offering additional funding. $5 million annually for the next decade, no strings attached." She stared at him. "Why?" "Because your work matters," he said simply. "The foundation deserves to succeed." "I don't want your guilt money, Harrison." Something flashed in his eyes. "This isn't about guilt. Then what is it about?" Harrison stood abruptly, pacing to the window. "I met with Vanessa in Paris to end things definitively. She'd been threatening to go public with claims that our engagement was fake unless I invested in her fashion line." Fiona's breath caught. "Blackmail." "Yes." Harrison turned back to face her. "I couldn't tell you because I was trying to protect you, protect this." He gestured between them. "But in doing so, I ruined it anyway." "There was nothing to ruin," Fiona said quietly. It was always going to end, was it? His voice had dropped, intense in a way that made her heart race. Because somewhere along the way it stopped feeling like an arrangement to me. Fiona stood, suddenly needing distance. Don't do this. Not now. When then? Harrison approached her, stopping just short of touching her. I've spent 3 months trying to convince myself that letting you go was the right thing. That you deserved better than a man who needed a contract to recognize what was right in front of him for years. Her throat tightened. What are you saying? I'm saying I love you, Fiona. Not for the cameras or the investors. Just you. The words she'd longed to hear now terrified her. You don't mean that. I've never meant anything more. He reached for her hand, and this time she didn't pull away. I was too proud, too afraid to admit it even to myself. By the time I realized you were already gone, Fiona shook her head. This is just because you lost something you thought you owned. No, Harrison's voice was fierce. This is because I wake up reaching for you. Because every achievement feels hollow without you to share it. Because after a lifetime of building walls, you're the only person I've ever wanted to let in completely. Tears threatened at the edges of her vision. How can I believe this isn't just another contract? Terms subject to change when convenient. Harrison released her hand and walked to his desk, retrieving a small velvet box. This isn't in any contract. He opened it to reveal not a flashy diamond, but a simple emerald ring identical to the pendant he'd lent her for the Brooks event nearly a year ago. You once said these reminded you of the forest where we used to explore as kids, Harrison said softly, before money and status and business complicated everything. When we were just Harry and Fee. A tear escaped despite her efforts. Harrison, I'm not asking you to sign anything, he continued, his own voice unsteady. I'm asking you to believe me. To give us a chance to make something real. No papers, no terms, no end date. Fiona looked at the dissolution documents still waiting on his desk. And if I sign these instead? Pain flashed across his features. Then I'll respect your decision. But I needed you to know the truth first. She stood silently, torn between self-preservation and the undeniable truth of her own heart. I was so careful, she finally whispered. I built every protection against falling for you, and none of them worked. Hope sparked in Harrison's eyes. Does that mean... It means I love you too, Fiona admitted. I think I always have since we were children. But I'm scared, Harrison. Loving you for real means risking everything. He stepped closer. Some risks are worth taking. Fiona reached for the dissolution papers and Harrison's expression fell, until she deliberately tore them in half. No more contracts, she said firmly. No more pretending. Harrison's smile was blinding. No more pretending, he agreed, pulling her close. Just us, real. Their first authentic kiss wasn't for cameras or appearances, it was private, genuine, and worth every moment of the complicated journey that had brought them there. 6 months later, they married again, not in a lavish ceremony for investors and press, but in the small forest clearing where they'd played as children. The emerald ring caught the dappled sunlight as they exchanged vows written from the heart, rather than by lawyers. Wesley Brooks, now a friend rather than a skeptic, raised his glass during the intimate reception. To Harrison and Fiona, proof that sometimes the best business decision is to follow your heart. As they danced beneath the trees, Fiona rested her head against Harrison's shoulder. No regrets? She murmured. Harrison's arms tightened around her. Only that it took a fake marriage for me to recognize a real love. In the end, what had begun as paper promises had transformed into something neither contract nor calculation could quantify. A partnership written not in legal clauses but in shared laughter, quiet understanding, and the courage to choose love over pride. Day after day, no signatures required.